Suffer little children, the babies of Gaza, starving for food and the world's help. Can anyone turn from this in the knowledge just a few miles away there is food and plenty, but not allowed in by Israel? One British surgeon just returned from Gaza tells Geraint of his utter despair.
The lack of food, the almost complete cessation of all aid and food coming in, the malnutrition in the newborns, in the small toddlers, in the young teenagers was awful.
With ceasefire talks collapsed in Doha, it is likely the situation will get even worse. Tonight, the Prime Minister declared the starvation in Gaza unspeakable and has called emergency talks for tomorrow. Emma will bring us the details. Also on News at 10 tonight. 50,000 doctors get ready to walk out again. A 5-day strike starts in the morning. No name for it yet, but former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn sets up a new political party.
It's not messy at all. It's a totally coherent approach. It's democratic, it's grassroots, and it's open.
Harrowing evidence from the first man to get compensation after enduring an exorcism for so-called gay demons.
The settlement itself feels like a victory, and also it feels like something that other people can build on, and hopefully will give hope to other people who've been through the same things.
And wrestling legend and Trump rally favourite Hulk Hogan dies at 71.
This is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham.
Good evening. In a place where frightening numbers of people are starving, there is one thing that is plentiful in Gaza: statistics, and awful ones. Today, there were more. The United Nations World Food Programme says a quarter of people there are living in famine conditions. By way of explanation, the UN told us the number of meals provided by aid agencies' community kitchens had fallen from 1 million a day to 150,000, so low are the supplies of food. As international outrage simmers, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, called the recent suffering and starvation unspeakable and indefensible. There is, though, no sign of it ending. Israel and the United States have pulled their peace negotiators out of talks in Qatar over Hamas's lack of commitment to a ceasefire. Once again tonight, our reporting on Gaza includes upsetting images and accounts.
Gaza's children have to grow up fast. Instead of toys, many are given pots and pans and entrusted with the tough task of getting them filled at a hectic street kitchen. For Gazans who can't afford the exorbitant prices being asked in marketplaces for the little there is, handouts from kitchens like this are one of the few other options left when it comes to getting fed. But these kitchens are becoming rarer and rarer, and the aid organisations set up to fight hunger say that in Gaza they're losing the battle.
We estimate that there is approximately a quarter of the population, so 500,000 people in Gaza, are living in famine-like conditions. So this means that they don't know where their next meal has come, or they've had no food for multiple days in a row.
According to Gaza's hospitals, more than 100 people have died from starvation so far, the vast majority of them children. Infants are the most vulnerable, often because their mothers are too malnourished to breastfeed. 11-month-old Sila is less than half the weight she should be. Her mother wakes up 3 times a night to make sure the child is still alive.
In this ward, we lost 4 children due to malnutrition. This is not fair. I feel like I'm losing my daughter. All of those children died because there was no food, no milk. Please help us. 4 children died in just one day and night. I feel I will lose my daughter too. I want food for her. I want milk.
Although the situation in Gaza is not being widely reported in Israel, today there was a demonstration against what's going on outside a US embassy building in Tel Aviv.
I'm personally a grandson of Holocaust survivor. My grandmother always used to say that starvation was the worst thing and worst suffering, so I feel moral obligation to end it, and that's why I'm here.
In this social media post, a Gazan father is offering a kidney for a bag of flour to feed his children. John Irvine, News at 10, Tel Aviv.
Well, for first-hand accounts of those deaths from hunger and weapons of war in Gaza, we have to rely for information and insights on those who live and work there, most importantly, local camera crews. But doctors from around the world who take turns in Gaza to give of their time and talents also have vital stories to tell. One, Professor Nick Maynard, has just arrived back here with thoroughly depressing conclusions. Even those he is able to save will probably die. They are so malnourished, they cannot heal. And he believes young boys are being deliberately shot at, suffering patterns of injuries. One day, just head wounds, the next, chest wounds, and then the abdomen.
Hello. Nick Maynard is a surgeon from Oxford, home from his latest trip to Gaza, with testimony of a new lethal threat to its people.
The malnutrition was far worse. The lack of food, the almost complete cessation of all aid and food coming in has made it much, much worse. And one case I really worry about is a young girl called Habiba who had a terrible explosive injury which really destroyed the lower part of her esophagus and her chest. I spent all night one night operating on her. She's being tube fed via a tube I put into her intestines. We are desperately trying to find more feed to keep her alive because she won't get better. And if she doesn't get better, she'll die. She won't get better without this special type of feed that she needs. The malnutrition in the newborns, in the small toddlers, in the young teenagers was awful.
Getting enough to eat is something that preoccupies all Gazans now, and the UN says around 1,000 of them have been killed while trying to collect food from the aid distribution centres which are overseen by Israeli soldiers.
Fatalities and severe injuries in predominantly young teenage boys, some of them as young as 11 or 12. And even worse than that, we saw a really disturbing pattern of injuries, a cluster of different body parts being targeted on different days. So one day the kids will be coming in with gunshot wounds to the head and the neck. The next day they'll be coming in with gunshot wounds to the chest. The next day to the abdomen. Almost like a targeting practice, almost like a game.
The IDF categorically rejects the claims of intentional harm to civilians. I've got a statement they released here. That's not your experience.
All I can talk about is what I've seen with my own eyes, and it's inconceivable to me that the multitude of injuries I have seen can be anything other than direct targeting of these children.
Professor Maynard arrived home from his 4-week stint at Nasser Hospital to hear new condemnation of Israel from his government. The British Foreign Secretary declared himself sickened and horrified by the plight of Gaza's civilians.
Well, it's all talk, but no action. I would like our government to be recognising that there is a genocide being carried out, recognising there are multiple war crimes being committed daily.
Again, Israel rejects accusations that it is committing a genocide in Gaza.
Breast milk water, and you can't get it. You've got none here. So
the suffering that this doctor has seen has convinced him otherwise. Geraint Vincent, News at 10.
And Emma is here to talk us through the fact we could have been contemplating a breakthrough in peace talks after contemplating those truly dreadful images that we've just witnessed. Instead, these talks have collapsed. Where does it leave us tonight?
Well, in terms of where it leaves the Palestinian people, in an even more desperate situation, and we seem to say this over and over again, and it just keeps getting worse. They are under siege, they are under attack, and they are now being stalked by starvation, as we saw there in that piece from Geraint. And what was striking is when these talks were suspended this afternoon, there was a statement from Steve Witkoff, who is the US President Trump's advisor, and he said that they were now going to have to look at alternative methods to try and find a way to bring the hostages home and find some kind of peace for the people in Gaza. That was a very disturbing and interesting line, because what are those alternative options? If they were palatable, why haven't they been used before? If they haven't been used because they are unpalatable, given what we've already seen, what on earth lies ahead? And I think that is causing real concern amongst the international community at this point. And in reality, if military force was going to solve this 21 months on, with 60,000 people dead and a starvation crisis, as well as hostages still being held and a whole area in ruins, well, military force would have done it by now. It's not going to do it, and they are going to have to find another way through this.
Sir Keir Starmer has spoken out in pretty strong terms about this. Heaven knows we've heard plenty of strong terms building up over these past few weeks, and it hasn't necessarily changed anything materially on the ground. He has called the suffering and the starvation in Gaza unspeakable. He'll speak to the leaders of France and Germany tomorrow about it. What more can you tell us on that?
Well, this meeting will go ahead tomorrow. It is obviously an effort by the UK, by France and Germany to be seen to be doing the right thing, but in reality, it will be largely performative. The world is watching this happen. The world, apart from the United States, seems to be unable to try and bring it to some kind of conclusion. And I think particularly now, governments and politicians around the world are starting to be very concerned that they could find themselves on the wrong side of history with this crisis.
Emma, it is a bleak night indeed. Thank you very much indeed for all the details that you brought us on that. Thank you. Now, when Health Secretary Wes Streeting started his job a year ago, he promised the new government would end the pay dispute in England with what were then called junior doctors. They got a 22% rise, job done. But in a little under 9 hours' time, they will walk out again. Hospitals say patients who have not been told their appointments are cancelled should turn up. But from 7 a.m, thousands of what are now called resident doctors will be non-resident for 5 days.
Well, it affects your whole body. A bowel disease that you can't control or get rid of. It affects my whole life.
For Emily, it was meant to be the end of constant pain. A long-awaited operation to ease her Crohn's disease. Due on Monday, now cancelled because of the strike.
And I totally understand why they're doing it, but it's people's lives that they are messing with, including myself. And if I don't get this surgery, my disease is only going to get worse, and I'm just so worried.
What do we want? Pay restoration!
This was the last time we saw doctors out on the picket line, days before the general election. Now, a year since Labour won power, up to 50,000 will be out again, demanding better pay, but against a backdrop of waning public support.
So this is a crushing blow for patients and the NHS, and the strike is unnecessary, and actually, in my view, it's irresponsible and reckless. The thing that they should do is call off the strike and get back around the negotiating table with the government.
Let me just see if I can get through to...
The previous strikes compounded pressures on an already struggling NHS. 1.5 million appointments were cancelled or postponed. This time, NHS bosses are urging hospitals to keep routine operations running. Unlike before, patients too are being encouraged to continue coming forward for care by attending any planned appointments unless contacted to reschedule, with priority given to those with the most pressing health needs, and with A&E remaining open. The advice to still call 999 for emergencies and 111 for urgent but non-life-threatening situations. But the doctors' union, the BMA, is accusing NHS leaders of spreading senior doctors who will be working too thinly, and says its pay demands aren't being taken seriously.
None of the strikes need to go ahead if the government actually would negotiate on these things. a patience or bargaining chip at the moment.
My request is simple, that we restore the pay. We've had 21% of our pay eroded since 2008. All we're asking for is not a pay uplift, we're simply asking to have that returned to us because we're not worth less.
Tonight, the government says there's no more money, and the two sides seem as far apart as ever. The strike begins in 9 hours' time. Sejal Karia, News at 10.
The landscape of British politics shifted today. We might not know how much until the next general election, but Jeremy Corbyn launched his new party with co-founder Zara Sultana, his fellow left-wing former Labour, now independent MP. There was some confusion about its name. Mr Corbyn says all suggestions are welcome, but the arrival of the party will not be welcomed by Labour, and Carl is here to take us through it. Apart from the speculation about the name, what is then the potential threat to Labour?
It's potentially very significant indeed, despite the slightly chaotic start. As you've described, Jeremy Corbyn started this morning by sending people to a website called Your Party. Lots of people assumed that was the name of the new party. Zara Sultana very quickly said, no, that's not the name of the new party. And then the party clarified, no, actually it is the interim name until they choose a new name at a conference in the autumn. So that was the first 20 minutes of the new party's life, and Jeremy Corbyn then had to deny that it had been a slightly messy start.
It's not messy at all. It's a totally coherent approach. It's democratic, it's grassroots, and it's open. And this is a party about peace, about justice, about equality, and challenging the issues of child poverty in our society while we're spending much more on armaments.
So look, the important thing is that there is a pretty substantial pool of voters who are attracted by the platform that he just outlined there. The pollsters more in common think that as many as 10% of voters could be persuaded to vote for that. And that's before we even factor in 16 and 17-year-olds who will get the vote at the next election and for whom Jeremy Corbyn is the most popular politician. Now, this is very bad news indeed, potentially for the Greens, whose vote could be decimated by this, but also for Labour. More in common think up to 3 points could be taken from their vote share by this new party. And that is difficult for Keir Starmer because he has recently been focusing all his fire on reform and the threat to his right. Now he's got to look out for the threat to his left as well, though sometimes reform economically anyway, seem to be to the left. So as things stand, I think the politician who will gain from this the most and who might be raising a glass to Jeremy Corbyn tonight is, of course, Nigel Farage.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Carl. Thank you. Now, the rhetoric was ramped up earlier for the announcement of the biggest trade deal since Brexit. Against the backdrop of Chequers, the Prime Minister's official country pile, he and Narendra Modi, his Indian equivalent, sealed the deal with a hug. It's worth about £6 billion and will reduce tariffs. The Conservatives pointed out that it would not have been possible without Brexit. Now, it shouldn't still be happening. Past and the present governments have committed to ending what is known as conversion therapy, when gay or trans people are pressured by uncompromising churches to suppress their sexuality or gender. But it is. And the first person to win compensation for being a victim of it has told us of the guilt and shame he feels about agreeing to an exorcism by 2 members of his local parish church in Sheffield.
It's quite an unassuming building, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it used to be a warehouse, but it had a big congregation. There was sort of 400 or 500 people in there when I was there.
St. Thomas, Philadelphia may be a vast church, but there hasn't always been room for everyone. And this building is where some of the activity took place for you as well, right?
Yes, this is where the exorcism took place, in one of the top rooms just up here. Being here, it does make me feel quite nervous.
Matthew Draper arrived at St. Thomas, Philadelphia in Sheffield, already anxious. Gay and Christian, he came seeking acceptance. But among all his memories laid out here, there's no evidence of him finding it.
I guess it became quite obvious that the church was against homosexuality in just how people reacted when they found out that I was gay. It was obvious that there was something taboo about it.
In fact, when Matthew joined a church internship, he was taught his sexuality was down to the devil.
We had to fill in a really detailed interview about our lives up to that point. I spoke a lot about the fact that I felt like I was gay and I wasn't sure what God was saying about it. They told us that we would have made agreements with Satan and that we would have demons that were potentially living inside us. And they said that those would leave us in air. So they said they might come out of your mouth in like a breath.
What was being explained to Matthew was his impending exorcism, recorded by these notes taken at the time.
I renounce this belief system and the curse of it, and I break it over my life.
The prayers were written down by the only other witness to the intense session which 2 church members subjected him to.
I cancel my agreement with Satan, and I cancel my agreement with the kingdom of darkness. As they told me that I needed to push out my homosexuality, it almost felt like I was pushing myself out of my head. It almost felt like I was splitting myself up. One of the people who was there said that they could see demons leaving my body and going out of the window.
How did you feel when they said that to you?
One of the main feelings that I still have is real guilt and real shame for putting myself through that and for being so cruel to myself, I think.
It's a feeling we've encountered before.
Father, grant him utterance in the name of Jesus.
ITV News has spent 7 years investigating conversion practices. In that time, 4 governments have promised to outlaw them.
We are determined as a government to end it.
We will then bring forward plans to ban it.
Measures will be brought forward to ban conversion therapy.
But the latest Labour administration still hasn't delivered. Now Matthew's case sets a new precedent of suing churches that cause harm. After an investigation by Bernardo's upheld his claims, St Thomas Philadelphia has paid him substantial compensation.
These practices do go on, particularly in independent churches, particularly fundamentalist churches, so I think it is an issue, and I expect that there will be more legal cases. I don't think this will be the last on this.
Matthew has already been contacted by others, enough to start his own campaign.
For every one story that I have, there must be 100 others. And the settlement itself feels like a victory. And also it feels like something that other people can build on and hopefully will give hope to other people who've been through the same things.
Matthew Draper speaking that to Paul. Now, the pressure to open the files on Jeffrey Epstein has tonight led to an extraordinary interview in a Florida prison. Department of Justice officials are meeting Ghislaine Maxwell, the former girlfriend of the paedophile financier. Let's cross to Robert in Washington to tell us, Robert, what we know of these talks so far.
Well, the Epstein scandal and all the conspiracy theories that swirl around it is really the story that won't go away, continues to haunt this White House. And today, as you point out, an extraordinary development. One of the most influential men in Washington, the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, went down to Tallahassee, the state capital, to a federal building there to meet up with Ghislaine Maxwell. She is there serving 20 years in prison for child sex trafficking offences. I mean, one of the big questions around this meeting is, does Maxwell have additional information that might incriminate other powerful men other than Epstein and connect them to these child sex trafficking rings? And many critics of the encounter that happened today point out, well, why would Maxwell tell the truth? Would she not push a narrative that distances Donald Trump from Epstein in order to curry favour with the White House and potentially to get a presidential pardon down the road? And while all of that was going on, we had President Trump here in Washington touring the Federal Reserve Building, currently something of a construction site. And that was good theatre too, because Trump and Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, have a famously contentious relationship. So as we've seen all week, this is Donald Trump trying to move the national conversation on from Epstein, trying to regain his political footing with his most loyal following.
OK, Robert, thank you. Now, when England's Lionesses take to the field in the Euros final on Sunday against Spain, it'll be a rerun of the World Cup final 2 summers ago. England fans will remember how that ended. To try to stop the same thing happening again, the players said today they are ready to run themselves into the ground.
The moment the Lionesses knew who stood between them
and an unprecedented second successive Euros title.
A moment of real quality from Aitana Bonmati.
Spain are a team who love to keep the ball under their control, so Sunday will be different to anything the Lionesses have faced so far during this tournament.
It's not about panicking and getting frustrated. I think we just have to be comfortable defending, and then, as I said, when we get the ball, we have to look after it. And yeah, I think the English mentality has been going through all of our games, and I don't think that's going to change in the final. If anything, I think we're going to be more proud to be representing our country.
Walsh is a very useful informant, having spent 2 years at Barcelona recently. But she says on Sunday the Lionesses must be themselves, express their own identity.
We give everything, we run ourselves into the ground, and that's the beauty of this squad, is that we know that if we have to come off because we're tired, there's going to be someone else who can come on and finish the job.
Win or lose on Sunday, the Lionesses have contributed to a remarkable recent record for England's senior teams. They've reached 5 major finals in the past 5 years, the men twice, and this weekend is the women's 3rd in a row. One of those was the World Cup final in Sydney against Sunday's opponents. England lost by a single goal. They've beaten them since, but Spain are undoubted tournament favourites, and Serena Wiegmann only has a few days left to fine-tune a winning strategy. As always, her bosses at the FA have full confidence in her.
I think she's just a really special person. She's just incredibly humble. I haven't seen her change at all. She's still the same really positive, humble person who builds brilliant connection with players and is obviously very good at game management.
The Lionesses have already matched the 1966 team by winning a major trophy. A victory on Sunday would be the first ever overseas, meaning this squad would stand alone in England footballing history. Steve Scott, News at 10, Zurich.
They can do it. Finally, people who've never watched a bout of world wrestling still know the name Hulk Hogan and recognise his distinctive look. Now, at the age of 71, he has died from a suspected cardiac arrest. He rose from the professional wrestling ring into film acting, survived a controversial court case and became a cheerleader for President Trump. He wrote on social media, the Hulkster was strong, tough and smart.
Flamboyant and outrageous.
It is deafening here in the Sky Dome.
In the wrestling ring and beyond, Hulk Hogan's persona lived up to the title of his theme song, The Real American. He was a pioneer of world wrestling, transforming it into the global giant it is today.
Even in Tokyo, Japan, there's all kind of Hulkamaniacs running wild. That's why it's so popular.
Born in the southern state of Georgia, Hogan, whose real name was Terry Gene Bollea, started his wrestling career in 1977.
I don't believe it!
And with his bulging muscles and trademark yellow and red costume, he quickly rose to the top.
Unbelievable!
He's an icon. He's probably done more for the wrestling business than any professional wrestler, in history. Done so much, right? He was like, everyone knows The Rock. One of the biggest stars in the world. Everyone knows John Cena, right? One of the biggest stars. They had the crossover appeal. He was the first person to do it, really, in that massive scale.
But his love of the spotlight went further than wrestling. He had roles in Hollywood movies like Rocky III, Mr. Nanny, and Santa with Muscles, proving his charisma could translate beyond the arena.
Some things never change.
His life was not without its controversies, though. In 2015, audio of him using a racist slur was made public. He apologised for the incident, but WWE temporarily cut ties with their superstar. Last year, he was back on the public stage.
Let Trumpomania run wild, brother!
Supporting Donald Trump at the Republican convention. The president posting on his social media platform, "We lost a great friend today. The Hulkster. Hulk Hogan was MAGA all the way. Strong, tough, smart, but with the biggest heart."
I got my pump back, man. The pythons are ready.
Hogan was a performer and an innovator. A man not without his scandals, who changed the face of wrestling forever.
Trailblazing wrestler Hulk Hogan, who's died at the age of 71. And that is all for tonight. We will see you again tomorrow from all the team here on News at 10. Good night.